What's up, everyone? Hope you had a good weekend. Hope your team got the result you wanted them to. So we have something a little bit different today. We're going to do a contest between us three. I guess before we get into that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mikey, Palace fan. Follow me at Matchday365, and then I'll let the other two introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm AMZ Palace fan as well.
And I'm Leon. I'm a West Ham fan.
Yeah,
I think in our last video, with the best players for each team, I think we agreed too much. And that's a problem. That we're not controversial enough with our opinions. So I think we're taking a different tact with this video, and we're basically gonna have some player debates, player battles, if you will. So basically, each of us is going to suggest two players. And then the other two are going to take a side each, and they have to debate who's the better player. And then whoever suggested the original question will basically decide who they thought won the debate, and thus who the better player is. So I think a good one to start will be Rashford versus Sterling, which is who's going to debate that one? Mikey and Leon, is it? Or
no, it's you two. You two are Rashford.
All right, me and Mikey then. Me and Mikey. You went for Sterling, didn't you?
Yeah, and before we get started, I do want to say that whoever is judging between the two will try to be unbiased. So no matter who they think, it's going to be a matter of who actually won the debate, not who they think is the better player. Just to keep it kind of competitive. So yeah, Rashford versus Sterling. You suggested this one, Leon. Before we start debating, who do you initially think is the better player?
So off the top of my head, it would be Marcus Rashford. That's who I'd go for. But obviously, I'm quite interested to see how you two play out your arguments, because I think it's really close. And I think all of our debates actually that we've gone for are really close and could go either way. So,
all right.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you guys.
James, do you want to get started with your Rashford?
Oh, you're gonna let me start, are you? Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I went into this thinking I want to argue for Rashford because based on almost the eye test or me watching him, I'm pretty sure he's a better player, despite them being obviously similar players. And I actually think this is quite a good debate because obviously with the England team, they're both fighting for that left-sided position. And this is basically why I think it's Rashford. So in terms of goals and assists, over the past two seasons, Rashford has 32 goal involvements, so that's 25 goals and 13 assists, compared to Sterling, who has 33, so very similar, just one more, 28 goals and 5 assists. So, and it was a similar story when I was looking at loads of other stats, whether it's expected goals, expected assists, chances created, that kind of thing. They're really, really similar, and I'm sure Mikey would have found the stat that disproved me on that. Just some random stat that disproved me on that. But in general, they do perform very similarly. But then I thought, so why do I think Rashford is the better player? And in reality, that's because of the team he's played in compared to Sterling. I know the phrase system player has become quite a commonly used phrase nowadays. I'm not too big a fan of it, but if anyone is a system player, I think it's Sterling. If you look at his goals, the majority of them are tap-ins from kind of low crosses across the box. And if you look at the players he's playing with, there's no wonder he's getting such a high amount of fairly easy goals. He's playing with creators like Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, those kind of players. Whereas Rashford is in a team where in previous seasons, obviously they're doing well this season, but in previous seasons, I can't remember exactly where they finished, but they haven't been at the level as Man City have, who've been first and second for the past 3-4 seasons. And that's why I think Rashford's a better player. He's just more important to his team. If you took him and put him in that City team, I think he'd do just as well as Sterling. Whereas if you put Sterling in that United team, I'm not quite so sure it would be like that.
Go on, then, Mike. Take it away.
I just want to preface that if you hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize. I'm going to close the door actually real quick.
That was tough, though,
Yeah,
Speaking on the spot like that.
So yeah, I went Sterling. I do agree it is really close, and I do agree in the fact that Sterling does benefit a lot from the players around him. You did bring up the fact that their goal contributions the past 2 seasons are 32 for Rashford and 33 for Sterling, so basically the same. But you were right that I was going to have a stat involving XG ready. So last season, Sterling had 20 goals and 1 assist, which is pretty shocking because previous 2 seasons he had 10 and 11 assists, respectively, each season. So I got to looking, and his XG assist rating last year was actually 7.29. So he should have had over 7 assists if his teammates finished their chances. I'm guessing most of those were Jesus, and probably Aguero as well. But he should have had more than 1 assist last season. He can't really do anything about his teammates missing chances. And I do agree that he does have a lot of tap-ins. I think Rashford is definitely a more clinical finisher. I'm definitely not going to argue that. But he does put himself in position to tap those balls in, and I do think you have to give him some credit for that, for being in the right position quite a lot. And his XG last season was 19.8, and he finished with 20 goals. So, I mean, about the same. So he was finishing most of the chances that he should finish, although he is, known for bottling a few sitters. But yeah, and I think part of the fact that his assist numbers are sometimes down is because De Bruyne in the past has been tasked with really being the playmaker for that team. Sterling has been racking up a good amount of assists in recent seasons too, but only recently has Bruno come in at Manchester United, and now he's kind of the playmaker while Rashford is, benefiting more from having him and scoring more goals thanks to Bruno getting those assists. So I do think it's really close. I just think while Sterling does have a lot of tap-ins, that he doesn't really get any credit for being in the right spot at the right time and kind of knowing where his teammates are going to put those balls. So I would say Sterling, but it is very close to me.
Yeah, it's a good point about his attacking positioning is good, and we actually saw it today where Man City beat Liverpool 4-1. He scored the last one, just tapped in a little header. But as we were saying, so this will be my second point. As we were saying just before we started recording, stats tell you 50% of the picture, but then the eye test is another 50%, and that 50% is telling me that a lot of Sterling's finishes don't look so confident as Rashford's do. I think Rashford looks more creative. He looks more dangerous when he's running with the ball in terms of beating a man. I think Sterling's kind of lost that part of his game a bit when he's running against players. Whereas I think Rashford is a danger when he's running at you in the box, that kind of thing. Yeah,
and I'll have just a follow-up point too. I will say that I think this time, a year, maybe 2 years from now, that I would be arguing for Rashford because Sterling will be, I think, near 30 in a couple of years, or maybe not 30, but nearing 30. And I think Rashford's still on the up and up in his career, while Sterling's probably just hit his peak recently. And I think Rashford is better on the ball in terms of being more dangerous. He is a better dribbler, but just because Sterling, he had 20 goals last season. The previous 2 seasons, he had 10 and 11 assists, and he had 17 and 18 goals each of those seasons. I'm just not ready to pass the torch to Rashford just yet, although my mind might change, even next year at this time.
I think the fact that we're debating them and we both agree that they're so tight at this point, when Rashford's still, how old is he, Leon? 21, 22?
23. Rashford's 23.
And Sterling's 29, do you say, Mikey? The fact that we're saying they're currently quite similar, and Rashford's so much younger, I think shows that we both agree that Rashford will be better in a few years, as you said. But at the moment, yeah, it is pretty close.
Yeah. Do you guys know how old Sterling is off the top of your head?
28, I think.
Okay, so will be 30 in 2 years. But yeah, Leon, you have the final say.
I'm going to stick with Rashford. I think even based on the debate, I'd still go Rashford, just because I think there was a cohesive argument in there for Rashford being the stronger player, and I do agree with Amesy's points on kind of the way that he looks confident when he's running with the ball. And something I'd add is just Sterling is when you get given balls like De Bruyne will give you on a play, it's unsurprising that maybe he does have a better goal record than Rashford does. But yeah, I'm going to stick with Rashford on that one.
Nice
But
one.
it is
Nice
really
one.
close. It could go either way. If Sterling maybe picks up some a good run of form, then you'd say maybe Sterling. So that's how close it is. It really is. A
So
few games.
if you had to pick the England team right now for like a World Cup final tomorrow, and I'm not like doubting you, but what do you pick? What do you pick? Rashford over Sterling?
Yes.
That's fair.
That's
it's
actually a
close.
really interesting debate. I put a few polls up on my Twitter, but like you've got Kane starting up top, and then you've got kind of 3 positions behind him, an attacking midfielder and 2 wide players. That's so much talent there for England, like so much so that players like Maddison aren't even really getting a shout because you've got Foden, Grealish, Sancho, Rashford, Sterling, 5 of those to fill those 3 spots. I think that's actually could be a really good debate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who to go for. No,
I mean,
Southgate probably put someone out there.
Off the top of my head, it would be Rashford on the left, Grealish down the middle, Foden on the right, playing almost quite a narrow 3.
I think it's a bit harsh on Sancho, to be honest.
It is harsh on Sancho, yeah, but I mean, I think Phil Foden's been playing really well recently. That's just quickly off the top of my head. And I know Sancho struggled a bit at the start of this season. I don't know if he's still struggling or not. I don't really follow the
No, he picked it up actually, but he did start quite poorly, but he's actually been much better recently. Right, so next debate then. Next debate.
We'll move on to Schmeichel and Ederson. So Leon gets to say now. So yeah, I pitched this one. I think both keepers, personally, are a little bit underrated. I think Schmeichel just like dominates his area in terms of like the mentality he has. I think he's a really good penalty stopper as well. Although I think Ederson's distribution is really good. So it's really tight for me. Although I would go with Schmeichel, gun to my head. So I'll let you two debate, depending on who you have.
Who do you want to go first, Ames, or do you want me to?
Yeah, could you go first?
So I've gone with Ederson just because when I look at him in goal, I think he's a very confident keeper and a keeper who City have come to rely on, especially this season. I know he faltered a little bit last season. He had a few games where he maybe didn't look quite as confident, but I've gone with Ederson. I think he does have the better save percentage. If I think that's if I've got that right, I think he's got the better save percentage, and I just think he plays to City's system fantastically. I mean, they play out the back so well, and I think having Ederson as that option, I think he's really, really good on the ball. I think is something only the top keepers can do. And that's why I've gone Ederson. But this is one which I really, really think is close. And I know that there are a lot of stats to maybe suggest that Schmeichel is the better keeper. But that's my kind of introduction for Ederson. I don't know if Ames will take it over now.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite glad that you actually put this one forward, Mikey, because I've got some quite strong feelings about both of these keepers, to be honest. Not in that way, but you mentioned save percentage, right? And he does have a better save percentage this season, Ederson. I think he's 6% higher or something. But actually, over both their Premier League careers, I think Schmeichel's got 69% and Ederson has a 70% save percentage. So, in terms of shot stopping, I actually have them quite similar. And then obviously Ederson's a better distributor. I don't think there's any doubt in that. But here are the reasons why Schmeichel is a better goalkeeper. Okay. So in their Premier League careers, they both have 6 errors leading to goal, right? However, Schmeichel has made 232 appearances and Ederson has only made 130 appearances. So in 102 extra appearances, he's made the same amount of errors leading to a goal. So therefore, he's more error prone than him. I think it's also important to say that obviously Ederson's won the league, but so has Schmeichel, and he won it with Wes Morgan and Robert Huth in front of him, rather than obviously Company and Man City spent millions and millions on defenders. I think that's also a good point this season when you look at save percentage. There's a reason it's so high. I mean, when you're playing against Ruben Diaz and John Stones, the shots you're going to be taking aren't going to be from such good positions because you just can't create those chances. And him to get frustrated and take long shots. And then my penultimate point is that he's Leicester's captain. And obviously, I think City's ranking goes for Fernandinho, De Bruyne, maybe Diaz or something. But Schmeichel's been Leicester captain for a few years now. Well, ever since Wes Morgan's kind of stopped playing, and they've done brilliantly in those seasons. And it's often not easy to captain a team from in goal, but I think he's done a brilliant job at it, and it's been one of the reasons why they've been so successful. Not only his consistent performances, but just being a figure in the change room and at the club in general. And that's another thing that kind of stats on its show. And then my final point, which is something about Ederson I really dislike when I watch him, is that obviously he's really good off his line when he's kind of sweeping the ball, they play a ball over the top and he's, clearing it or whatever. But what he does sometimes is when a player's kind of running in on goal, but there's one more player to beat, he comes off his line as if it's just a one-on-one and that there's no player there. And then the player thinks, oh, sweet, he's off his line, and they shoot, and they score quite often. And it's a hard thing to explain, and it's not like a statistical thing that I can bring up. But what he does, he just comes off his line when it's unnecessary, when there are defenders about to close players down, and basically in positions where players wouldn't shoot if he hadn't rushed off his line for some reason. And obviously rushing off your line can make it harder to score because it closes down the angle. I've played in goal, so I know you're meant to come out of goal for one-on-ones, but it's just the wrong timings, and I feel like he does that often. And obviously, in this debate, it'd be easier to bring out the stats, and I can't really do that for this one, but I think there's an error in his game, and perhaps that's why he's had a few errors leading to goal.
I mean, I appreciate that you can't bring up a stat for that, and I personally haven't noticed that. Maybe that's just because I'm not really looking at the keeper. I mean, as you say, you played in goal. I know you're quite. When we've had debates before, you hold your judgment on keepers as one of your best footballing areas to judge.
Remember that save I made the other day against you?
Yeah, I do remember it.
Right hand over the top, fingertips onto the bar.
It was a screamer in the making. You stopped it. But yeah, the one thing I would like to say is you do say Ederson comes off his line quite a lot, which is true. But I haven't actually seen it. Well, obviously when it leads to a goal. But something I like about him is when he comes out of the goal and he wins the ball. And I know that it does remind me of that time when he came out with Mane, and then the time last season where he knocks out Eric Garcia literally cold coming off his line quite quickly.
Yeah, there's one against Spurs where I think it was he made an error coming out where he didn't have to.
Ederson is very quick off of his line, and there have been a lot of times in games where I've watched him, contrary to when he comes off and then the player will score, he comes off and he'll beat the attacking player to the ball, something which I genuinely think he is the only keeper in the league that could and probably would do that, which at times has equally stopped goals in the way that you say he concedes goals through that. So that's another reason I like Ederson. He's quick off his line and he's a quick thinker in that department when he comes off and he'll beat the attacker to the ball, because he is actually fairly quick. And obviously I've seen a few City fans saying maybe he should be their penalty taker. So, you got the goal threat for Ederson as well, which you maybe don't have.
Well, one thing I'll say for Ederson is he's brave. He is brave, and obviously that goes against my debate, but he's definitely one of the bravest keepers in the league.
Yeah, I was going to add, once you started talking, Leon, that I think for Man City, Ederson might be a little bit better than Schmeichel, even though I do think Schmeichel's better because he is brave and he has that swagger, and he's really good at playing from the back, which City are obviously much better at than most teams. But if I'm looking at it from a neutral perspective, I would still probably go Schmeichel. I also think, Amesy, you kind of talked about it, how Ederson does come out of the box a lot, and he is brave, while Schmeichel, at least to me, is really good at holding his ground. And just, having good technique in his saves and one-on-one situations, like we saw today against Fabio Silva, I think it was. Wolves played Leicester today, right?
Yeah, I didn't watch it, but they did, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was making sure, but yeah, Silva had a great chance at the end of the game, and then Schmeichel barely got a leg to it, and but he held his ground. So I think Schmeichel is still probably the better keeper, but Leon, to you, I will say that for Manchester City, I think Ederson does a really good job because of his style. So yeah, and
it's fun actually for a team like City, and we saw today with Alisson, he tries to do a similar thing to what Ederson does, and he's made 2 errors from it and kicked it straight to the attackers, and that's why Ederson suits City so perfectly. they would much rather have Ederson than Schmeichel. It's a much better fit for them.
Yeah. All right, our final one, or not our second to final one, Dominic Calvert-Lewin against Danny Ings. You pitched this, Amesy?
Yeah, I proposed this one, and the reason I proposed it is because I wasn't really sure on it, to be honest. They're two brilliant strikers playing for teams that are outside the traditional top six, and two strikers kind of contending for an England place as well, especially with Kane's injury record. I think one of these two would be the player looked at to step up, with Vardy being retired from international duty. For me, I'm leaning slightly to Ings, I think, and I might explain why at the end if we've got a bit of time. But go ahead, you two.
Yeah, I'll start this one off. So it's really close. This is a really good one. I think this season Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been a little bit better than Danny Ings, but I'm trying to look at it from just like who is the better player, and I think Danny Ings is a little bit better. So I looked it up. DCL has 13 goals this season. Danny Ings has 7. But Calvert-Lewin has missed 9 big chances, and Ings has missed 5. So I think Calvert-Lewin is getting more chances, and that's credit to him that he is, like I said about Sterling, putting himself in position to get those big chances. But he also is missing more. He doesn't have any assists this season, and he's really lacked in his career at getting assists. Last season he had 2, and that's the most he had in a Premier League season. Ings also had 2 last season, but he has 3 this season, and he obviously had 20 goals last season. So I will say Calvert-Lewin, the reason I say he's been better this season is not just because of how many goals he scored, but I think his hold-up play has been really good. He's been really good in the air. But I think Danny Ings is just a more clinical finisher. I think he's a little bit better at getting his teammates involved, at passing. And yeah, it is close, but I mean, 20 goals from Danny Ings last season for Southampton, or was it? It might have been 22 actually. 22, yeah, for Southampton, who weren't a bad side, but to have 20 plus goals for a mid-table team is really, really impressive to me. So, yeah, I'm going Danny Ings.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you should talk about the big chances missed from Calvert-Lewin, because Calvert-Lewin's scored 11 of his 20 big chances. That's according to Premier League. I don't know. Obviously, as we spoke before we started recording, there are some discrepancies with depending on which website you use for your stats. But Calvert-Lewin scored 11 out of his 20, and Ings has scored 4 out of his 9. So as you say, Calvert-Lewin's missed 9 of his big chances, but Ings has missed 5. And as a percentage, obviously, Ings has scored 4 of his 9, and Calvert-Lewin scored 11 of his 20. So I think Calvert-Lewin is getting more chances for sure. Whether that's also because Ings has only played, I think he's only started 16 games this season, whereas Calvert-Lewin has started 20. Whether that's because that's why he's got more chances or not, I'm not too sure. But something else I'd like to mention, you did actually mention it, that Calvert-Lewin is much, much better in the air, and he has this season especially brought that aerial threat. And I also think he is quicker than Danny Ings. And on the weekend, you saw against Man United where he was giving Lindelof, and that's not really in the first half because Everton didn't really play to that, but in the second half he was giving Lindelof and Maguire real trouble running in between the channel of the fullback and the centre half, and he does that quite a lot where he gets in behind, and him and Richarlison as a front two do cause the centre halves a lot of problems, as they're both very, very quick forwards and not ones you want to play against. So yeah, I think for me, not only does Calvert-Lewin have more goals this season, and by quite a bit, he also brings a lot more. Like as a centre half, I think Danny Ings is solely a finisher, and maybe a better finisher than Calvert-Lewin is. He is overperforming his expected goals by a little bit more than Calvert-Lewin is, even though he is also overperforming. But I think Calvert-Lewin brings those 3 real dimensions. He's a good finisher. He's good in the air, and he's quick, and he's good at getting in behind. And I think Danny Ings is a little bit more one-dimensional, but it is really, really close. And I'm only putting all of this praise on Calvert-Lewin and not on Ings because I'm debating Calvert-Lewin. And if it was me just talking about the 2 players, it would be very different. But yeah, that's why I've gone Calvert-Lewin.
So I did want to bring up one more stat. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he started the season obviously on amazing form. He had 7 goals in his first 5 games. The 7th of those goals came versus Liverpool. Since that Liverpool game in October, he's played 8 top 10 teams, and he's only scored 1 goal against those top 10 teams, and it was against Man United yesterday. So he went 7 straight games without scoring against a top 10 team, and he has only scored 6 goals in the 17 games since those first 5 games. So he hasn't been bad, but his form definitely has kind of leveled out a little bit. And you do have to wonder if – because, I mean, I don't want to be harsh. He hasn't been bad since then, but you do wonder if he's ever going to, like, pick that form back up where he is, like, looking like a world-class striker versus just now he looks like a good striker, but nothing, like, super special. So, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's really good. But I just think Danny Ings is a little bit better. So
I do have a couple more things to mention. Obviously, you said that since that time, Calvert-Lewin hasn't really scored. Calvert-Lewin has 1 goal involvement in his last 11 games, and that was the goal against Liverpool, which won in the game, which actually was a great finish. I remember the.
Wait, sorry, what? Calvert-Lewin has.
Oh, I mean, sorry, Danny Ings. I didn't think Calvert-Lewin. Sorry. Ings has 1 goal involvement in his last 11 games. And Ings has also scored 2 penalties this season, which, and I believe Calvert-Lewin doesn't have any penalties. That might be wrong, but I don't think Calvert-Lewin scored any penalties this. Yeah, because Sigurdsson is their penalty taker. Calvert-Lewin hasn't got any. Ings has 2. So that when you take that off, you've got 5 Ings goals in comparison to Calvert-Lewin's 13. Ings has obviously only got 1 in his last 11 games. So I think, and that's obviously. I think it's tough to judge him on that, as he did have a couple injury problems at the start of the season, so he's obviously coming back from that. But yeah, for me, I think, especially based off this season, but also based off the last 2 seasons where Calvert-Lewin has 26 in 55 and Ings has 29 in 56, so he has slightly more goals, and obviously I'm going to go with the recent games more than the ones at the start of, say, last season, where he was bagging goals. So I'm going to go Calvert-Lewin,
Yeah, but before I turn it back over to you, Amesy, I do also want to point out, I don't know if you touched on this, Leon, but Calvert-Lewin is now playing with James and Richarlison versus Ings is playing with good players, but nobody like especially James. So I think those 2 are definitely helping Calvert-Lewin this season, having them around. But yeah, to his credit, he has been banging in the goals. So
can we title this Mikey and Leon have heated debate over Ings and Calvert-Lewin? I think I'll get reviews and stuff.
Yeah,
we could do
in all caps.
That was a good debate. You went back and forth. I'm gonna say Leon won the debate. I mean, it hasn't swayed my opinion. I still think my opinion is Ings, but based on what's been said there, I'd say Calvert-Lewin looks the better, particularly in just saying like Ings' last 11, he's only got 1 goal involvement. Yeah, for me personally, he's obviously Ings has made 5 assists in the last 2 seasons. Calvert-Lewin's only made 1, and then he's also got 3 more goals. So overall, you might see Ings, but then this season Calvert-Lewin has been much better. And as you say, he's kind of got that whole package. Maybe apart from link-up play, slightly lacks, but in terms of aerial threat and stuff like that, he's brilliant. So I would probably choose him for England. However, a point I'd like to make about England is that he's kind of got that, like, it's almost like a Vardy trait where he's just an animal, and he makes so many chances for himself, from just chasing people down, from winning tackles, from duels and things like that, which is why I think he scores so many in a Southampton team that aren't particularly creative. James Ward-Prowse reads and get a massive amount of assists. So as Mikey said with his last point, Ings is in a much worse team, which is why I've kind of gone for Ings overall. And I think, so for example, if you were to put Ings in, I think you could put Ings in any team in the league and he'll score loads of goals, whereas Calvert-Lewin maybe in a team that don't cross so much, don't play as many high balls through Digne, James and stuff, maybe wouldn't be as prolific. But yeah, they're my thoughts on it. Good debate though.
to be honest, I was looking into the Schmeichel Ederson stats. I was scrambling for something to talk about.
I saw that too. It's like their save percentage is like 7 points different.
Yeah, I was like, I really, really struggled. The more I kind of went Ederson off the top of my head. Like I was like, eyes closed. I reckon Ederson, obviously he's City keeper. He's done a lot of good distributor. And then I look into the stats and I'm like, hang on a minute.
You turned up without your homework, mate.
Yeah.
What do you expect?
But I didn't for the DCL Ings one. That one I had a bit more research on.